Hey, what is up mortals? It is BubblyNami here, with a new video for you. Welcome to part 1 of What If Izuku Had a Wood Release Quirk. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax. You are in for a treat. And so, we begin. Izuku discovered what his quirk was when his mother took him to a national park for a vacation. The child was truly speechless when he first took in the sight and felt the atmosphere of the beautiful park. He could feel the energy, the life of the forest around him. The Midoriya matriarch sat her son in her lap as he relaxed in the natural environment. The freckled child in her lap had his eyes closed, feeling out for the energy he felt around him. He imagined the forest surrounding him, the beauty of it, and felt a pulse emanate from inside of him. Exhaustion took over his body, and he fell asleep in his mother's arms. The woman watching in awe as a small sprout began to grow in front of her very arms. She was quick to rush to the ranger station to get some help for her son, the theory she had of what was happening being confirmed upon arrival. He had finally come into his quirk. A great weight seemed to be lifted off of the woman as she stroked his green locks of hair. She'd been so worried he would never develop a quirk, something that would have crushed him. The rangers offered to take her and Izuku back to wherever they needed to go, which she gratefully accepted. She looked at the passing greenery of the park and held her child close to her, smiling at it. The park had helped him find his quirk, and for that, she and her son would forever cherish the existence of the land around them. Using and developing his quirk was a bit of a struggle at first for the little Midoriya. It took a decent chunk of his stamina to actually use it, and sometimes the trees he grew didn't seem to flourish as much as they did in certain places. While he tended to one of the less successful growths, he discovered that, with thorough concentration, he could bend the trees or even make them move or curl how he wanted them to. When he was 10 years old, his mom bought him a book about botany, specifically about the saplings he had been sprouting from the ground. After a rather thorough bit of research from a boy of his age, he discovered that his quirk was also powered by soil, in which his seedlings grew from. Further research led to a discovery that it was nitrates in the ground that helped fuel the process of his quirk. The energy he expelled was to pull the nitrates and water from the ground to help create trees. The reason they had not grown that big yet was because his stamina had simply not reached a point where it could produce larger plants. But he did his best to not let that drag him down. The positive side was that the control he wielded over them was determined solely by his concentration. However, the focus he put in sometimes caused him minor headache. He wanted to become a hero, just like All Might, and all the other pro heroes. However, his current weakness of his quirk drew a fair bit of ire from his childhood friend Katsuki. The explosive blonde sometimes mocked the other teen for wanting to be a hero with a quirk as weak as his was. Despite this, the two never really had a falling out, until the last day of their junior high school year approached. Their teacher had been conversing with the students about what careers they'd wish to go into, leading him to reveal that Bakugo wanted to attend the prestigious UA Hero School, and Izuku along with him. As the final bell rang, the familiar sound of a hand slamming down on his desk startled Midoriya. "The hell you think you're doing, you damn Deku? You really think you can get into UA with a quirk you could barely use?" A nasty sneer was fixed across his face. "Get with the program, nerd. You're never going to be able to do anything with your quirk, so forget it." Crimson eyes glared down at the botany textbook the jungle-haired boy had brought with him to class. The boy snatched it and let his quirk spark up, singeing the cover badly. Before Izuku could even finish uttering his protests, the abrasive teenager tossed it out the window, a faint splash echoing back up to the window. The cronies in the hallway were all loudly laughing at the expense of the young man, who ran out of the classroom as soon as his group of bullies left. He ran out of the school and gasped as he saw the shadow of the book in the fountain in front of the building. He fished it out and felt despair as the smudged ink all over the pages. The boy huffed as he closed it sharply and marched back home, trying to keep his tears from leaving his eyes. He hardly paid attention as he instinctively began following his daily route home, not noticing the rumbling of a nearby manhole cover. The feelings, anger, frustration, and sadness muddled with his mind, all being replaced by shock and confusion as some sort of slimy body engulfed him. He began violently twisting and struggling as he tried to pry himself free of the villain who was suffocating him. Black spots started to appear on the edges of his vision as he bordered unconsciousness. In his peripheral vision, he could have sworn he saw All Might standing there. He had just fallen into a comatose state when he heard the hero's signature catchphrase, and it was like he was struck by lightning. He gasped and breathed heavily as he woke from his torpid state. He looked around wildly before gasping at awe at the towering man before him, the number one pro hero, All Might. Words seemed to escape the teen as he gazed at his very motivation for being a hero. He could only think of a question, one he had to be holding on to since school ended. Can I be a hero, like you? A confused look entered the symbol of peace's eyes as the young man began hastily elaborating. You see, my quirk isn't that strong, but I've been training with it. Kachan says that I can't do it, but I have to try. I can be a hero, right? A weight was gently placed on his shoulder as the blonde luminary knelt in front of the shorter male.
I can see a fierce determination in you, young man. Use it.
He stands tall and gazes right into Midoriya's eyes.
A hero cannot be measured only by his quirk, but also by the dedication he has to being a hero. You have that drive. So work your hardest. Go beyond. Plus ultra.
Tears of joy leaked out of the emerald-eyed youth as the man nodded to him before jumping high into the sky in the direction of the police department to turn in the villain he had caught. Snapping out of his trance, Izuku searched for his textbook and found it, along with one of his research books he used to document the findings of his quirk. He flipped it open and gasped as he saw All Might's signature on the inside cover. A giant grin stuck itself on his face as he enthusiastically continued his way home. He would never give up. After all, his idol had given him his own approval. The weeks leading up to the entrance exam were filled with exercises to expand the teen's stamina and concentration. So he could increase the size of the trees he formed and reduce the time it took to create them. He had found a clearing in a forest that was close to his home as possible where he could train. He ran laps around the perimeter of the area, did mental and endurance exercises, and often meditated with his hands in the ground to feel the water and nitrous elements in the soil. The progress was continuous, but crawled at a snail's pace. He could barely form a small tree now, and it wasn't exactly something he could use to fight with. Frustrated by how slow his training was progressing, Izuku let loose a wave of energy into the ground, and rather than a normal plant, a wooden beam-like structure shot out, stopping at the same height as normal. Intrigue sparked inside his mind as he tried again, summoning the same beam-like structure, this one coming to a sharp point. Awe was the only feeling the teen could feel as the tree responded to the motion of his hands as he waved it back and forth. He had found an edge that he could use in combat. He instantly began testing the capabilities of his quirk's new development. The strength of the wood was shocking, and the response time to his commands gave it a similar feeling to another limb. He began setting aside time to experiment with creating new techniques with his ability, taking a page out of Kumai Wood's book to use his quirk for mobility. By using his quirk just as he was jumping, the force combined with his own energy and momentum allowed him to soar at whatever angle he wished. He could choose whether to project himself a good distance away or launch himself high in the sky, the latter which he still needed a better landing idea for. On the last day of his training, he had successfully increased the size of his saplings until they surpassed his own height. He dragged his exhausted body back home to rest, ready for whatever would come his way tomorrow. Izuku was quick to get ready and leave for the entrance exams, his mother having a proud gleam in her eyes as she hugged her son tightly. The shorter woman smiled as she shooed him towards the direction of the school. The teen had a good feeling about the day, until he tripped just as he was about to enter the school grounds. However, rather than eating dirt, as he expected to, he continued floating in midair as someone pulled him upright. A brunette girl smiled sheepishly and apologized for using her quirk, only wishing to help him. The nature-loving teen profusely thanked her before the two separated for a written portion of the exam. With all the experience he had gained in research, finding topics of study that would assist him in his portion was a breeze. The research paid off, as he was able to exit the room feeling rather secure in his place in the exam. He followed the flow of students to the open area, where there was a podium in the middle of the room. The inner fanboy in him came out full force as President Mike strutted into the room. The pro began to announce the challenge for the physical portion of the exam, robots. The boy began to mutter quietly to himself, trying to come up with a strategy before the test could even start. A bespectacled boy startled him and cut his train of thought off, stating he was a distraction to others, only to be cut off as well by another participant speaking up. The vocal hero was quick to defuse the situation, as he led the enthusiastic to an enormous mock cityscape where they would be fighting their robo-villains. After a brief wishing of luck, he sent them to find their foes. Izuku bit his lip as he ran around the city. The concrete jungle seemed to have no spots where he could access the actual earth to use his quirk. He had first spotted a patch of dirt in the tracks left behind by the hulking robots, which was currently unengaged. The Viridian Eye teen ran forward and slammed his hand into the ground, a stake shooting up from the ground and managing to impale the head of the machine. A rush of success ran through him, and he fist-pumped the air before taking off to find more robots to destroy. He kept track of the points in his head, riling up 20 points before the buzzer sounded loudly in the area around them. The announcement that the zero-pointer had been released was unneeded, as everyone could see the hulking mass of steel lumbering out. The adolescent turned around, ready to take off in any direction, but where was it going? Until he heard a cry for help. He snapped his head around to see the girl who had helped him earlier, trapped underneath a large pile of rubble. In an act of pure instinct, he ran over to her and began to calm her down, promising to help her. He buried his hands beneath the piece of concrete until he felt the earth around his fingertips. He expelled a controlled amount of energy, creating two beams that slowly grew until she was free. Midoriya grunted as he felt a headache coming on from how intensely he had been concentrating. He clambered to his feet and carried the young woman, who introduced herself as Ochako Uraraka, to a place where she would be safe. He just turned to try and rack up more points, only for a second buzzer to go off, signaling the end of the practical exams. Both of the teenagers felt anxiety fill the pits that formed in their stomachs, neither believing they had achieved a point total that would let them pass. Izuku dejectedly made his way to the exit, deciding to assist the injured brunette to Recovery Girl. After seeing the state of her ankle, Uraka offered him a sympathetic smile as the two parted ways, the school nurse giving them a clean bill of health. Upon returning home, he was confronted by a meal of katsudon and a hug from his mother, who gave a vote of confidence in him doing well. He could only smile softly at how supportive his mother was, hugging her back. The days passed slowly for the son of Inko, nerves getting the better of him. His every thought was filled with the worst case scenarios, lasting the entire time it took his letter from the UA to arrive. He opened it next to his mother, a small disc falling to the surface of the dining room table. A flash of light shone from its top, the iconic figure of All Might appearing as his hologram right in front of the Midoriya family. They held their breath for a moment, before the symbol of peace declared that Izuku Midoriya had passed with flying colors in both the physical and written exams. The action he had taken to save his fellow aspiring hero student had earned him enough points to enter Class 1A of the prestigious Hero Academy. The holographic hero faded out of existence as the news seemed to hit the family. His mother leaped for joy as she began to cry tears of joy, blubbering incoherently. A giant grin spread across her son's face. He had made it. He was on his way to be a hero. Thank you all so very much for sticking around, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Before you leave, we would like to let you know that we the Celestials have many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.